Eke was a beautiful young woman who lived in a small village in the heart of Enugu State. Her village was quiet with tall trees and rolling hills surrounding the homes. The people there were simple and kind, and they lived off the land. But Eke was different from everyone else. She was not just beautiful. She had a strength that no one could match. It was said that she could lift a huge stone that 2 or 3 men would struggle with, and she could even carry heavy logs of wood on her back without breaking a sweat. Her muscles were strong, her body built like that of a warrior, and her bravery was known all over the village. But with great strength came great fear. The men of the village and even the nearby villages were terrified of Eke. They had seen her lift grown men off their feet with just one hand. They had seen her fight off wild animals that dared to enter the village. She had once even defended the village from a group of thieves, chasing them away with nothing but a large stick. Hello everyone, my name is Adugo and you're watching the African Tales channel by Adugo. Before we dive into the story, please kindly click under the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you will be notified whenever I upload a new video. Now, let's get into the story. The women of the village admired Eke, but they also felt a little jealous. They would whisper to each other about how strong and beautiful Eke was, but none of them would dare to challenge her. The men too respected her, but feared the thought of marrying a woman who could beat them in a fight. Eke, however, wasn't bothered by the fear. She was used to it. What bothered her was that she couldn't find a man who would love her for who she was. The men in the village were too scared to even talk to her, let alone ask for her hand in marriage. One day, as she was walking through the village market, she overheard 2 women gossiping. "Have you heard? Eke is still unmarried. Can you believe that?" One woman said, shaking her head. "Who would want to marry a woman who could break a man's arm with one touch?" The other woman nodded. "Yes, it's a shame. She's so beautiful, but no man dares to ask her out. They are all afraid of her strength." Eke's heart sank. She had always known that the men were scared of her, but hearing it out loud made it worse. She tried to ignore the conversation, but it stayed in her mind. She wanted someone to love her, not just admire her strength. That evening, Eke sat outside her hut looking at the stars. The cool breeze rustled the leaves of the trees, and the sound of the crickets filled the air. She sighed deeply. "Why is it so hard?" she thought. "Why can't anyone love me for who I am?" Suddenly, she heard a voice behind her. "Eke, you are not like the others, and that is why they fear you." Eke turned around quickly, surprised to hear someone speak to her so late in the night. It was Okeke, a young man from the village. He had always kept to himself, never joining in the conversations about her strength. "Okeke, what do you mean?" she asked, curious. "I mean, you are different from the other women. You are strong, brave, and independent. They are afraid of that," Okeke said softly. "But I am not afraid of you, Eke." Eke's heart skipped a beat. No one had ever said that to her before. Okeke smiled. "I see you for who you truly are, Eke, and I admire you for it." For the first time in a long while, Eke felt a warmth in her chest. Could it be that someone could love her for who she was, despite her strength? Could she finally have someone who saw her as more than just a powerful woman? As the days went by, Eke and Okeke spent more time together. They would sit under the tree by the river, talking for hours. Okeke never once seemed afraid of her. And Eke began to realize that he might be the one person who truly understood her. But just as things were starting to look brighter for Eke, Trouble was brewing. The other men in the village noticed the bond that was growing between Eke and Okeke, and they did not like it. They were jealous. They were scared, and they would do anything to stop it. One day, as Eke and Okeke were walking through the village, a group of men blocked their path. They were big and rough-looking, their eyes filled with anger. "Eke," one of them shouted, "what are you doing with him?" Eke stood tall, her hands on her hips, ready to defend herself if she had to. "What is the problem?" she asked, her voice steady. "You are too strong for any man in this village, Eke." Another man spat. "No man should be with you. You will break his bones." Okeke stepped forward, his voice calm. "I am not afraid of Eke's strength. I love her for who she is." The men laughed, but it wasn't a friendly laugh. "You will regret this, Okeke," one of them sneered. "You can't stop what is coming." And with that, they walked away, leaving a tense silence behind them. Eke and Okeke stood there, looking at each other. Eke could feel the fear building inside her, but she refused to let it show. "What was that about?" she asked quietly. "I don't know, but I am not going anywhere," Okeke said, taking her hand. But Eke knew that things were about to get even harder. The men in the village had never been so angry before, and she had a feeling that this was only the beginning of something much bigger. Little did she know, dark forces were at work, and her strength, the very thing that had always made her feared, was now going to be the key to something far more dangerous than she could ever imagine. The days that followed were heavy with tension. Eke could feel the weight of the eyes on her everywhere she went. The men who had confronted her and Okeke that day were not the only ones who felt threatened by her strength. Rumors spread quickly through the village, and soon the entire community seemed to be watching her every move. Eke tried to stay focused on Okeke, who had proven to be a kind and brave companion. But as the days passed, something strange began to happen. More and more villagers started to distance themselves from her, avoiding her gaze when they crossed paths in the markets, in the fields, and even on the narrow paths through the forest. Okeke, ever patient, tried to comfort her. "Don't mind them, Eke. They are just afraid of what they don't understand. You are special." Eke wanted to believe him, but it was hard. She had always known that people feared her strength, but this felt different. This felt like something more sinister was brewing beneath the surface, something she couldn't see yet. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the village, a messenger arrived at Eke's door. The old man was breathless, his face pale with fear. "Eke," he gasped, "you must come quickly. There is trouble. The elders are calling for you." Eke's heart raced. The elders were respected members of the village, but they rarely called anyone to their meeting unless it was important, or, in some cases, dangerous. Without hesitation, Eke followed the messenger through the winding paths of the village until they reached the gathering place. The elders sat in a circle, their faces grave, their eyes filled with unease. "Eke," one of the elders began, his voice low, "you are a strong woman and we have always admired your strength. But there are whispers, dark whispers among the men. They believe your power is unnatural, and some say it comes from a dark spirit." Eke felt her stomach tighten. "A dark spirit? What do you mean?" Another elder spoke up, her voice trembling slightly. "There are rumors that your strength is cursed. Some believe it was a punishment from the gods. They say that the more powerful you become, the more dangerous you are to everyone around you." Eke's heart sank. She had always known that her strength set her apart, but she had never thought of it as a curse. It had always been a gift, something she had been proud of, something that had saved her people in times of need. "Are these rumors true?" she asked, her voice steady despite the fear creeping up inside her. The elder who had spoken first shook his head slowly. We do not know, but there are those who say that your power is a sign of something far greater, something that is coming. They fear that if you do not learn to control it, it could destroy us all. Eke felt a chill run down her spine. What were they saying? Could her strength really be a danger to everyone she loved? Okeke, who had been standing quietly behind her, stepped forward. This is madness, he said firmly. Eke has always used her strength for good. She has protected this village more times than anyone can count. Why now are you calling her a threat? One of the elders raised a hand to silence him. It is not just about what she has done in the past, Okeke. It is about what might happen in the future. Eke looked around the circle of elders, her heart heavy. She could see the fear in their eyes, and it made her doubt everything she had ever believed about herself. Could it be true? Was her power something dark, something dangerous? We need time to think, the elder continued. The village is divided and we must decide what to do. The meeting ended shortly after, and Eke and Okeke walked back to their huts in silence. The air was thick with uncertainty and Eke's mind was racing. She had never felt so alone. When they reached the hut, Okeke took her hand. Don't listen to them, Eke. You know who you are. You are not a curse. You are a gift. Eke smiled weakly, but inside, she was torn. The elders had spoken the truth. People were afraid of her, but what could she do? How could she change what everyone thought about her? As the days passed, the tension in the village grew. The whispers became louder and the fear spread like wildfire. Eke could feel the cold stares, the harsh whispers behind her back. She tried to ignore it, but it was impossible. Everywhere she went, people looked at her as if she were something dangerous. One evening, as she sat alone outside her hut, staring at the stars, Okeke came to her, his face filled with worry. I've been hearing things, he said quietly. Some of the men are planning to drive you out of the village. They say your strength is a danger, and that you must leave before it destroys us all. Eke felt a surge of anger and fear. How could they think that of her? She had only ever tried to protect them. Her hands clenched into fists, and for a moment she wanted to scream at the injustice of it all. Don't worry, Okeke said softly. I will be with you no matter what. But even as he spoke those comforting words, Eke couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was coming. She could feel it in the air like a storm on the horizon, waiting to break. And she was right. The next day, as Eke walked through the village, she was met by a group of men, the same ones who had confronted her before. But this time, their faces were hard with anger, their eyes filled with fear. You have to leave, Eke, one of them said, his voice cold. The village can't take any more of your power. You are a danger to us all. Eke stood tall, her heart pounding in her chest. I have done nothing but protect this village. Why are you turning against me now? Another man stepped forward, his voice shaking with fear. Because we don't know what you are, and we are scared. Before Eke could respond, the men reached for their spears, their faces filled with determination. Eke's heart raced. They were serious. They were going to force her out. And that was when Eke realized something. She could no longer stand by and let fear dictate her life. She had to fight back. But how? How could she stop the very people she had sworn to protect from destroying her? As the men closed in on her, Eke made a choice. She would fight, not just for herself, but for the future of her village. It was time to show them what true strength was. The tension in the air was thick as Eke faced the group of men. Her fists clenched at her sides, her muscles coiled like a spring ready to release. She had never wanted to fight her own people, but now she saw no choice. If they were going to turn against her, she would show them the power she had always used to protect them. One of the men stepped forward, his spear raised. You must leave, Eke. If you resist, we will force you to go. The village has decided. Eke's heart raced, but her face remained calm. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. She had been through battles before, against wild animals, against thieves, and even against her own doubts. But this felt different. These were the people she had lived among, the people she had fought for. I don't want to fight you, she said, her voice firm but calm. But if you force me, I will defend myself. You know that I am not a danger unless you make me one. The men hesitated, unsure. They had heard the rumors. They had feared her strength for so long, and now that fear was making them tremble. Eke could see it in their eyes. They didn't want to do this, but the whispers, the doubts, and the fear had taken root in their hearts, making them believe she was a threat. Suddenly, one of the men lunged forward, attempting to strike her with despair. In a blur of motion, Eke stepped aside, her body flowing like water, and she grabbed the spear with one hand. With a single twist, she wrenched it from his grasp and threw it to the ground. The man staggered back in shock, his eyes wide with disbelief. How did you? Eke's voice was cold, but her gaze was full of sorrow. I didn't want this to happen. I never wanted to hurt anyone. But you leave me no choice. The other men backed away, whispering among themselves. They had seen her fight before, but never like this. They had never seen her fight against them, never seen how fast and strong she really was. Okeke suddenly appeared, rushing into the clearing. His eyes searched the faces of the men, and he stepped between Eke and the others. Enough, he shouted. This madness must stop. Eke is not the enemy here. You are letting fear cloud your judgment. The men were silent, staring at Okeke, unsure how to respond. Okeke, his voice steady and filled with conviction, continued. I love Eke. I have seen her fight for this village time and time again. She has saved you, protected you, and never once used her strength against any of you. She is not a curse. She is a blessing. One of the men, his face darkened with anger, shook his head. We don't trust her anymore. The elder said her power comes from a dark spirit. We must make sure she doesn't destroy us all. Eke's heart sank. The fear they had been fed was growing, and it was taking root deeper than she could imagine. She turned to Okeke, her eyes filled with sadness. I have never wanted this. I only wanted to protect everyone, to help them. But now it seems like my strength is the thing they fear most. Okeke stepped closer to her, his eyes locked on the men. You are stronger than any of them, Eke, and I believe in you. Let's not give in to their fear. We will find a way to show them the truth. But before Eke could respond, a loud voice interrupted them. It was the elder who had first spoken to her in the meeting. Enough! The elder's voice cracked like thunder. This fighting is pointless. The village is divided, and it will only fall further into chaos unless we find a way to restore peace. Eke turned to face him, her hands trembling at her sides. What do you want from me? Why must I leave my own home? I've done nothing wrong. The elder sighed deeply, his face heavy with years of wisdom and worry. Eke, you are strong, yes, but the fear that has spread through this village is poison. It has taken root in hearts we cannot reach. You must leave, at least for a time, so that the fear can fade. We need to rebuild trust. Eke felt like the ground beneath her had been ripped away. Leave? Leave her village? Her heart ached at the thought. She had spent her whole life here, helping and protecting these people. But if she left, would they ever be able to see her as a person again, and not a monster? Okeke's hand gripped hers tightly. Don't listen to them, Eke. You are not the problem. The problem is fear, and we can fight that together. Eke's eyes flickered between Okeke and the elder. And if I refuse? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The elder paused. If you refuse, we will be forced to take more drastic action. The men are already prepared to drive you away by force. We do not want that. We do not want bloodshed. For a moment, Eke's mind whirled. She had always been ready to fight, to defend what was hers. But this was different. These were the people she had spent her whole life protecting. The idea of violence against them was unbearable. But as she stood there, staring into Okeke's eyes, a realization slowly began to take shape. If she left, even temporarily, maybe it would give the village time to cool down. Maybe it would give them time to reflect on their fear and heal the wounds they had caused. She could not fight every battle by herself, no matter how strong she was. With a heavy heart, Eke nodded slowly. I will leave, she said, her voice steady but full of sorrow. I will leave for now, but I will not stay away for forever. I will come back when the time is right. The elder nodded, relief spreading across his weathered face. Thank you, Eke. Your strength is needed to bring peace, not war. We will help the village heal, and in time, we will find a way to welcome you back. Okeke turned to her, his eyes filled with pain. This is not the end, Eke. I will wait for you no matter how long it takes. Eke smiled sadly, placing a hand on his cheek. I know you will. I will always come back to you, Okeke. And with that, she turned and walked away from her village, her heart heavy but determined. She had faced many challenges before, but this was different. She was not just fighting for her strength anymore. She was fighting for the future of her home and for the love she knew she deserved. As she disappeared into the distance, the village behind her fell into silence, unsure of what the future would hold. Days turned into weeks and weeks turned into months. Eke's absence hung over the village like a heavy cloud, casting a long shadow over everything she had once known. She traveled through the forest, finding refuge in a small quiet clearing far from the village. Every night, she would sit under the stars, thinking of Okeke, of the village and of the life she had left behind. Despite her decision to leave, Eke couldn't shake the feeling that she was meant for something more. Her strength, once a symbol of fear, had been a part of her for as long as she could remember. It had always been used to protect those around her. So why did it feel like the village had thrown her away as if she were a danger? Why couldn't they see that she was more than just a source of fear? Okeke's letters arrived every month, carried by the few brave villagers who still believed in her. Each letter brought a mix of sadness and hope. He spoke of the village and how it was healing but still divided, and how some of the men who had once feared her had begun to see the truth. But there were others who still whispered that she was cursed, that her power would bring disaster to them all. Eke's heart ached with each letter. She wanted to return, but part of her feared that even if she did, the fear would never really fade. The villagers would always see her as a danger, no matter how hard she tried to prove them wrong. The distance between them was more than physical. It was a gap in their hearts and minds, a gap that no amount of strength could bridge. One evening, as Eke sat by the fire in her clearing, a shadow moved in the distance. Her senses, always alert, immediately recognized it. It was Okeke. Eke stood up quickly, her heart pounding. Okeke, she cried out, running to him. His face was tired, worn from the journey, but his eyes shone with determination. Eke, Okeke said softly, holding out his hands to her. I couldn't stay away any longer. The village, they need you. They need you to return. Eke shook her head. I can't, Okeke. They will never accept me, even if I return. They will never look at me the same way again. They will still be afraid. Okeke stepped closer, gently taking her hands. I know it's not easy. But I believe in you. I always have. The fear, it's fading, Eke. Slowly, but it's fading. The villagers who once feared you are beginning to understand. They are starting to see that your strength is not a curse. It is a gift. And we need that gift now more than ever. Eke's breath caught in her throat. Could it be true? Could the village really be changing? Had the fear finally started to crumble? There is something happening, Eke, Okeke continued, his voice urgent. There is a threat to the village, something worse than fear. Strange things have been happening around the land. Crops have been failing, animals are dying, and there are rumors of dark magic in the forest. People are scared again. They think it's because of you, but I know better. I think it's something else. Eke's heart skipped a beat. What kind of dark magic? What are you talking about? Okeke's face was grave. There are whispers of a sorcerer who has come to the land. They say he is powerful and he has come to take control of the villages. But I believe he is after something more. Something tied to your strength, Eke. You must come back. The village is in danger and only you can stop it. Eke's mind spun. The thought of returning to the village after all this time filled her with doubt. But the need to protect them was stronger. If this dark magic was real, and if it was connected to her strength, then she had no choice but to face it. I will come back, Eke said, her voice filled with a new resolve. But I will not come back as a weapon to be feared. I will come back as Eke, the woman who loves her village, the woman who will fight for her people. They will see me for who I truly am.